They know I'm here. They've tracked the signal to this sector. If we don't move the artifact tonight, everything is lost.
Why did the alien princess secretly visit one human? The shuttle dropped out of warp with no identification signal, no beacon, no transponder, no flight plan registered anywhere in the Keth Imperial database. Just a sleek silver vessel, smaller than a cargo pod, burning hard through the atmosphere of a forgotten rock called Dunn's Station. A human mining colony so irrelevant that the Empire hadn't even bothered to name it properly. The pilot kept the engines cold until the last possible second, then fired the retros just above the tree line, dropping the shuttle into a ravine 3 kilometers from the colony's edge. She sat in the cockpit for a long moment after landing. The monitors showed nothing but fog and dark pine trees and the distant glow of human work lights. She pulled her hood up. Her name was Aelindra Vel Keth, third daughter of Emperor Keth Solarin, princess of 47 star systems, and she was absolutely, completely alone. She stepped out into the cold. The air hit her like a wall, wet, heavy with the smell of soil and something burning. Iron, she realized. The humans were smelting iron here. Primitive. The Keth had abandoned ironworking 4,000 years ago. She checked the device in her palm. A small scanner, modified, running on a frequency her father's intelligence service didn't know existed. The signal was still there. One signal, coming from a single human in that colony. She moved through the trees. Marcus Cole was underneath a broken ore crawler when the dog started barking. He didn't own a dog. That was the first problem. He rolled out from under the machine and looked up. Just the gray sky, fog rolling in off the mountain, his breath making clouds in the freezing air. The dog, some scraggly yellow thing, was standing 20 meters away, barking at the tree line and refusing to come closer. "Okay," Marcus said, mostly to himself. He was 34, medium height, hands that looked like they'd been rebuilt from spare parts, which they basically had been mining accident 2 years ago, had taken 3 fingers on his left hand, and the colony's doc had done her best. He wore the same jacket he'd worn for 6 years, patched in 4 places, with a Dunn's Station crest on the shoulder that nobody outside this rock would recognize. He picked up his wrench and stood up slowly. The dog stopped barking. Something stepped out of the trees. Marcus had seen Keth before. Everybody had. They ran the sector. They ran pretty much everything past the old boundary line, tall, pale, with those wide silver eyes and fingers that were just slightly too long. Usually they wore the copper-colored uniforms of imperial administrators, or the black and gold of the military. This one was wearing a gray cloak with the hood pulled up, and was standing at the edge of his workyard like she was trying to decide whether to run. He noticed 2 things immediately. She was young, and she was alone. "You lost?" he said. She pushed the hood back. He recognized her face, not personally, from the broadcasts, from the imperial seal that played before every announcement on every screen in every colony. The third daughter. He'd seen her twice in his life, always in the background of some official ceremony, always looking like she'd rather be somewhere else. His brain told him several things at once. None of them were comfortable. "You're the... I need you to not say that out loud," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were moving constantly, checking the perimeter. "I need you to act like I'm a regular traveler who asked for directions. Can you do that?" Marcus looked at the wrench in his hand, looked at her, looked at the empty workyard. "Sure," he said. "You want some coffee?" She sat at his kitchen table like she was waiting to be executed. His kitchen was small and badly lit and smelled like machine oil and canned soup. The table had 3 chairs, all mismatched. The window above the sink looked out over the colony's main pit, where ore crawlers moved in slow lines through the red mud. He put a mug in front of her. She looked at it like she wasn't sure what it was. "It's hot," he said. "Just drink it slowly." She wrapped both hands around the mug and looked at him. Those silver Keth eyes were unsettling up close. Not threatening, just ancient. Like looking into something very old that had been thinking for a very long time. "You are Marcus Cole," she said. "Yeah? You were born on Earth. Relocated here at age 9. You worked the mines until the accident. Now you maintain the colony's equipment. You've done your homework." I've been watching you for 6 months. He sat down across from her, took a slow sip of his own coffee, kept his face neutral. That's a little concerning, he said. I know. She looked down at the mug. Something moved across her face. Not quite guilt, but close to it. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear, and I need you to understand that I am risking everything to be here. If my father finds out... She stopped, pressed her lips together. If anyone finds out I came here, I will not survive the week. The colony outside kept moving. Ore crawlers in the mud, work lights cutting the fog. All right, Marcus said. Talk. She talked for 20 minutes without stopping. He didn't interrupt her. He just sat and listened and drank his coffee and watched her face, which was the most honest face he'd ever seen on a Keth. They were usually controlled, almost architectural in their expressions. She looked like she was carrying something so heavy it was about to break her spine. The first thing she said was that the Keth Empire's historical records were wrong. Not mistaken, not incomplete, wrong on purpose. 400 years ago, humans had not been a primitive species stumbling out of their home system. They had been something else entirely, something the Keth had spent 4 centuries making absolutely certain no one, human or otherwise, would ever remember. The architects, she said. That's what the oldest Keth texts call them, before they were buried. Before my great-great-grandfather ordered every copy destroyed and every scholar who'd studied them reassigned to dead-end posts at the edge of the galaxy. Marcus put down his mug. You're saying humans built something. I'm saying humans built everything. She leaned forward. The relay network, the warp corridors, the station at Aldous Prime that the Empire uses as its military headquarters, the one they claim Keth engineers constructed in the founding era. They didn't build it. They found it. They found all of it. He stared at her. The entire FTL infrastructure of the known galaxy, she said quietly. Every jump gate, every relay beacon, every deep space corridor that allows faster-than-light travel across 47 star systems. Humans built it. 430 years ago, and then something happened, and they were gone. And the Keth moved into the infrastructure like hermit crabs moving into abandoned shells and told everyone they'd built it themselves. The fog outside had thickened. You couldn't see the ore crawlers anymore. Just their lights, blurry and orange, moving slowly through nothing. What happened to them? Marcus said. To the humans who built it. She looked at him for a long moment. That's the second thing, she said. Nothing happened to them. They were still here. That was the part that hit him like a physical thing, like the recoil on a mining charge that goes off too close. The humans alive today, all 12 billion of them scattered across 17 colony worlds and 1 battered home planet, were the descendants of the original architects. Except that 400 years ago, after the Keth military conquest, every human who'd had any memory of what their civilization had actually been was systematically relocated, re-educated. The colonies were stripped of any technology that might trigger recognition. And something else was done, something Ailendra's voice dropped to barely above a whisper to describe. A genetic suppression protocol. My grandfather's geneticist designed it, she said. It works like a lock. The knowledge isn't gone, not entirely. It's encoded at a cellular level in every human being alive. Your entire technical heritage. Everything the architects knew. It's in your DNA like a compressed archive. But it's locked, dormant. Humans can't access it. They can't even feel it's there. Until, Marcus said. Because there was clearly an until. She hadn't come here to tell him a sad history lesson. She'd come here because something had changed. Until 6 months ago, she said, when your genetic scan at a routine medical checkpoint flagged an anomaly that routed to a monitoring system my father doesn't know I have access to. She reached into her cloak and set a small device on the table, a scanner. You're expressing, Marcus, partially, maybe 10% activation, but it's real. You're the first human in 400 years to show any deviation from the baseline suppression. He looked at the device, looked at his hands, the mismatched fingers, the calluses. What does that mean? He said. Expressing what exactly? We don't know yet. That's why I'm here. She met his eyes directly. And that's why, if my father finds out, if the Imperial Intelligence Service runs your scan and sees what I see, they will not reassign you or re-educate you. She stopped. They will simply remove you. The yellow dog had come inside at some point. It was sitting by the door, watching both of them. Marcus Cole sat in his badly lit kitchen on a forgotten mining rock, with the Imperial Princess of 47 star systems across his table, and felt something stir in the back of his mind like a word he almost remembered but couldn't quite reach. "Okay," he said slowly. "What do we do?" She had a plan. He was not entirely surprised. She hadn't crossed 7 star systems alone in an unmarked shuttle because she was improvising. What she needed from him was simple to describe and terrifying to contemplate. The suppression protocol had a key. One specific genetic sequence, expressed in one specific way, could unlock the archived knowledge, not just in Marcus, but potentially in every living human, if the sequence could be broadcast through the right medium. The relay network, the same FTL infrastructure that humans had originally built. It was designed to be controlled by the architects, she said, biometrically. The relay network doesn't just transmit signals, it can transmit biological encoding. That's how the original humans updated the system. Through themselves. Through their DNA. So if I access it, if you fully activate an interface with the nearest relay node, the signal would propagate. Every human in range, then every relay would carry it further. She paused. Within 72 hours, every human alive would begin to remember. Remember, he repeated. Who they are, what they built, what they know. He stood up and walked to the window. The fog had eaten everything. His reflection looked back at him, just a mechanic. Just a guy who fixed ore crawlers on a rock that the Empire hadn't bothered to name properly. Your father, he said. He'd know immediately. Yes, and he'd respond, yes. With the fleet, the entire 6th and 7th Imperial fleets are currently stationed at Aldous Prime, she said. 4 hours from here at warp. If the signal propagates... She stopped. Chose her next words, carefully. He won't allow it to complete. Marcus turned around. Then why are you here? Why risk this? Why risk yourself? She was quiet for a moment. My mother was human, she said. He went still. She said it simply, without drama, but her voice carried 400 years of buried weight. A quarter human, technically. My grandmother on my mother's side. They didn't know. The bloodline had been suppressed so completely that the genetic markers looked Keth. But 6 months ago, when your scan flagged, the monitoring system cross-referenced every member of the Imperial family. She looked down at her hands. I'm expressing 2. Less than you, 2%. But it's there. A long pause. I am what I am because of what they did. And everything I have, everything I live inside, the palace, the fleet, the 47 systems, was built by people whose memory was deliberately murdered. She looked up. I want it back, she said. I want them to get it back. All of it. They had 9 hours before her absence would be noticed. She had built a window of plausible deniability, a formal meditation retreat, filed with the appropriate attendance, which would buy time. But 9 hours was 9 hours. The nearest relay node was 40 kilometers from the colony, up in the mountains, buried under 3 centuries of rock and pine and the general assumption that it was a natural geological formation. The Empire's survey. Teams had never flagged it because they'd never been looking for it. They thought they knew where all the relay infrastructure was. They'd cataloged it all themselves. They'd cataloged the obvious parts. Marcus had been up in those mountains 100 times, hunting, searching for ore deposits, just walking, the way men do when they need to stop thinking for a while. He'd always felt something strange near the eastern ridge, a low vibration that wasn't wind and wasn't seismic, and that the colony's geologists had shrugged off as mineral resonance. He knew what it was now. He packed a bag, basic tools, emergency rations, a medical kit. She watched him move around his quarters with an expression that was impossible to read. You're not afraid, she said. It wasn't quite a question. "I'm terrified," he said without stopping. "I'm just not letting it vote." He grabbed a coat off the hook by the door. Paused. "If this works," he said, "if every human starts to wake up, remember whatever the word is, what happens to them? To us? We don't have a fleet. We don't have infrastructure. We've got mining equipment and colony ships and 17 scattered worlds that the Empire controls." "You'll have the relay network," she said, "fully, under human control for the first time in 4 centuries. Every jump gate, every corridor. The Empire moves its fleets through infrastructure it doesn't actually control. It just operates it. If the Architect's descendants reclaim the authentication layer, the Empire can move," he said. "The Empire goes nowhere without permission," she said quietly, "which is how it was always supposed to work." He stared at her. "They built in a failsafe," he said. "The original humans. They built the network so that they could shut it down if someone else took over. The architects were brilliant," she said. "They just didn't build it fast enough." The first hour up the mountain was quiet. Just the two of them in the dark, moving through pine trees and rock, her cloak exchanged for a practical cold-weather jacket from his storage, both of them breathing clouds in the freezing air. She moved well for someone who'd, presumably, spent her life in palaces. He mentioned this. "I requested a military posting when I was 18, she said. "My father refused. I trained anyway, with guards who are willing to be bribed." A pause. "I had a lot of time to think about why he refused. I think I know now. Because he knew about your grandmother. He must have known for years." Her voice was controlled, but something moved underneath it. "And he said nothing. He just kept me close and kept me watched and let me believe I was exactly what the Imperial Registry said I was." "But he let you live." She was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she said. "He let me live. I've thought about that too." They climbed. At the 4-kilometer mark, Marcus stopped and held up his hand. She froze instantly, which confirmed the military training. He pointed upward and to the left. A light in the trees. Stationary. Artificial. They crouched behind a boulder and watched it for 30 seconds. "Drone," she said quietly. "Imperial pattern. Long-range surveillance model." "How many did you bring?" "None of mine." Her voice had gone very flat. "That's not mine." He felt the cold settle into his spine. "How long has it been there?" "I don't know." She was already scanning with her device. "I'm reading 2 more. 3-point formation. Standard monitoring setup." She looked at him. "Someone else knew you'd go up this mountain. Or someone else knows about the node." They stared at each other in the dark. "My father's intelligence service," she said. "If they ran an independent analysis of your scan." She stopped. "We have less time than I thought. Can we go around?" "Not without crossing the drone perimeter. They'd light us up immediately." "What about going through it?" She pulled out her scanner, modified it quickly with small, precise movements, and showed him the screen. 3 drones in a triangle. Gap between 2 of them roughly 8 meters wide. "I can jam one for approximately 90 seconds, she said. "If we move fast enough. We can be through before it reorients." He looked at the gap, looked at the terrain between them and it. Rocky. Open. No cover. After the first 20 meters. "If we run," he said. "Yes, both of us. Yes." She looked at him, and he saw something in her expression that might have been, in a human face, the particular mix of terrified and determined that comes right before someone does something they know is probably stupid. He recognized it because he saw it in mirrors. "On 3, he said. They made it through. Barely. The jammed drone reoriented while they were still in the gap. She'd misjudged the recovery speed, and its sensor beam swept 3 meters behind Marcus's heels as he threw himself behind a rock formation on the other side, landing hard, catching Ailendra's arm as she came down next to him. They lay still and breathed. After 60 seconds, the drones resumed their patrol pattern. After 90, he helped her up. Neither of them spoke for the next kilometer. The eastern ridge was close now. He could feel it, not just the vibration in the ground, which was stronger up here, almost musical, but something else, something internal, like a pressure behind his eyes that wasn't a headache, like a word in a language he didn't know but somehow almost understood. "You feel it," she said. "Yeah. It's getting stronger as we get closer. Your expression level, it's not static. It responds to proximity." She was watching her scanner. "Marcus, it's at 40% now." He stopped walking. "20 minutes ago you said 10. I know." They looked at each other. "The node is activating," she said. "Because you're approaching, it's recognizing you." Her voice was professionally calm, and her hands were not quite steady. The original design, biometric recognition. The system was dormant, not dead. It's been waiting. He took a breath. "For 400 years," he said. "For the architects to come home," she said. The trees thinned out. The ridge rose ahead of them, and in the pale pre-dawn light, Marcus could see it for the first time for what it actually was. Not a natural rock formation, not a mineral outcrop, but something made. Something geometric, buried and eroded and grown over, but underneath the centuries of rock and root, undeniably, unmistakably constructed. It was enormous. The visible portion was maybe 30 meters of curved stone rising from the ridge, but the curves were wrong for geology. Too perfect, too deliberate, carved in a language of arcs and angles that the rest of the mountain didn't speak. The vibration was coming from inside it. "There's an entrance," she said quietly. "My scanner shows a seal on the eastern face, biometric lock." He walked toward it. The pressure behind his eyes intensified with every step. Not painful, the opposite of painful, like something coming into focus, like his vision sharpening in a way he hadn't realized it was blurry. He reached the eastern face of the structure, ran his hand along the surface. The stone was warm despite the cold air, and under his palm where he touched it, something lit up. Thin lines of pale blue light tracing patterns outward from his handprint, like cracks in ice, spreading across the face of the ancient stone, illuminating geometry that had been invisible until now. He heard her breath catch. The seal opened. Inside was light. Not artificial light. Something integral to the material of the walls, blue-white and steady, responding to his presence as he moved through the entrance corridor. The architecture was human. He knew that without knowing how he knew it. The proportions were right, the scale was right, everything oriented for a body exactly like his. Whatever the Keth had told themselves about the architects, they had not been anything other than people, just people who had known things that had been very carefully taken away. The central chamber was circular, 20 meters across. In the middle stood a column that rose from floor to ceiling, covered in those same illuminated patterns that were now moving, actually moving, flowing through the column like slow lightning. "The interface node," Alendra said. She was standing at the entrance, not coming any further in, something in her expression. "This is as far as I should go. Why? Because the next part is yours." She held his gaze. "The system won't respond to me the same way. I'm too diluted. 2% expression, enough to find you, not enough to do what you can do." A pause. "And because if this goes wrong, if the Empire responds before the signal completes, someone needs to be outside to run." "I'm not asking you to run. I know." Something in her expression shifted. Something that was, unmistakably, grief. "But my being out here gives us a few more seconds of warning. If they're coming, I'll see them first." She looked at the column. "And Marcus, it's going to get loud. When the signal starts to propagate, every relay in range will activate simultaneously. The Empire will know within minutes." "How many minutes to full propagation?" "If the system works the way the text described, 12 minutes. After 12 minutes, the signal is self-sustaining. They can destroy this node and it won't matter. The network itself carries it." "And before 12 minutes? She didn't answer, which was an answer. He looked at her for a moment. This woman who had crossed 7 star systems alone, who had been raised in a lie large enough to contain a galaxy, who was standing at the entrance to her own history with an expression like someone looking at something beautiful and terrible at the same time. "Your mother's family," he said. "Do you know who they were?" "No. The records were destroyed." A pause. "But they were from Earth, the original home world." So, whoever they were. She stopped. They were architects, he said. She nodded. Just once. Then you're where you're supposed to be, he said. Right here. Doesn't matter if it's 2%. He turned and walked to the column. He put both hands on it. The world disappeared. Not literally. He could still feel the cold air, still hear his own heartbeat. But everything in his mind reorganized itself around a single access point, like a camera finding focus. The pressure behind his eyes became not a pressure, but an opening, a door swinging outward. He saw the network, the entire galactic relay system, all at once, rendered in something that wasn't quite vision but was the closest approximation his brain could manage. Thousands of nodes, thousands of jump corridors, every gate and beacon and relay point across 47 star systems, all connected, all running, all operating in the Keth's name because they'd never known there was another name to run them under. And he understood it, not learned it, understood it. The way you understand your own name, the way you understand how to breathe. 400 years of compressed knowledge unlocking in layers, each layer revealing another, a cascade of information his brain somehow knew exactly how to process, because it had always known how, the knowledge had just been asleep. He found the signal, the propagation command. The architects had built it in at the foundation level, a broadcast protocol that could be triggered by any sufficiently expressed descendant, that would carry through every relay, that would reach every human alive. He understood the cost now, too. The relay nodes weren't just transmitters, they were resonators. To push the signal to full propagation in 12 minutes, the node would draw hard, on itself, on the surrounding geography, and on the person interfacing with it. He'd felt the vibration in the ground for years. The node had been building charge for years. It was ready. He wasn't entirely sure what it would do to him. He reached for the command anyway, and from outside the chamber, he heard Allendra's voice. Sharp. Alert. Marcus, they're here. He heard the fleet before he heard anything else. The sound of Imperial warp emergence was distinctive, a bass frequency that you felt in your chest more than your ears. Close. Very close. He'd been underground and hadn't seen the sky crack open, but he felt it through the node because the network could feel everything connected to it, including the weapon systems of the ships now appearing in the atmosphere above the mountain. Not just drones, full military. He counted through the node's sensors. 3 frigates, 1 command cruiser, and a ship he didn't have words for yet, but that the unlocked knowledge labeled instantly as an orbital suppression platform. Designed for exactly this. Designed to prevent exactly what he was about to do. Allendra came running into the chamber. 6 minutes, she said. They'll have ground troops down in 6 minutes. The frigates are already in position to fire on this location. She was breathing hard, but her voice was controlled. Marcus, whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now. I know. He didn't move his hands from the column. There's a problem. There's more than one. The propagation signal. To push it to self-sustaining in 12 minutes, I need to run the resonance cascade. But 12 minutes from now, they'll have ground troops inside this chamber. Yes. And if they interrupt the cascade before it completes, it fails, and the node shuts down, and they take you. Her voice didn't waver, and the next suppression protocol will be permanent. He could feel the column pulsing against his palms, the charge it had been building for 300 years, waiting. All those mornings he'd walked past this ridge and felt the vibration without knowing what it was. The node had been feeling him coming for 30 years. Maybe longer. There's another option, he said. Tell me. The resonance cascade has an emergency setting. Accelerated propagation, 45 seconds instead of 12 minutes. He could see it in the knowledge. Clear, precise, and annotated with a warning so stark it was the first thing you saw. The cost is that the primary node becomes the resonance source. It doesn't just transmit, it detonates, releases all stored charge at once. Silence. This chamber, she said, everything, within about 200 meters. More silence. She looked at him. He looked at her. There's a third option, she said quietly. Leave. Right now. My shuttle is still in the ravine. We run, and we find another way, and there is no another way. He felt calm. Strangely, completely calm. In 6 minutes, there are Imperial troops in this chamber, and this node is destroyed, and the suppression protocol runs for another 400 years. Maybe forever. Your father's people are very thorough. She was staring at him with those silver eyes. You don't have to do this, she said. I know. He met her gaze. I want you to run. Right now. Get to your shuttle. When the signal propagates, you'll need to be in position to tell people what it means. What's happening? Why? Someone who can speak to both sides. Someone the Keth might actually listen to. He paused. Someone who's a little bit of both. Her jaw tightened. Marcus, go, he said. Please, don't let me do this for nothing. The column pulsed. The ground shook slightly as the frigates moved into firing position above the mountain. Alundra looked at him for 3 more seconds. He watched something move through her expression that he would never be able to fully describe. Loss, determination, grief, and something else, something that would take her years to name. She turned and ran. He reached for the emergency cascade. The sky above the eastern ridge of Dunn Station lit up like a second sun. Every relay node in the sector activated simultaneously. The jump gates across 17 human colony worlds flared to life with a new authentication signal, one that overrode the Keth operational layer and replaced it, cleanly and completely, with a protocol 400 years dormant. The Imperial Sixth Fleet, halfway through a warp maneuver between Aldous Prime and the Keth border, dropped out of FTL without warning when the jump corridor suddenly required new authorization codes they didn't have. The Seventh Fleet, responding to the incident at Dunn Station, found its warp drive cycling down as every relay in range shifted authentication simultaneously. One by one across 47 star systems, Imperial ships, that had relied on infrastructure they thought they owned, discovered they were operating on borrowed time and borrowed corridors that had just, politely, changed the locks. And in the minds of 12 billion humans, on colony worlds and home stations and prison camps and labor facilities, in mines and ships and classrooms and kitchens, something moved. A warmth. A pressure. Something like a memory surfacing from the deep water of suppression, not complete, not instant, but beginning to surface. A cellular knowledge without words that was not yet language but was, unmistakably, recognition. They didn't know what they were feeling yet. They would learn. Alundra reached her shuttle 12 minutes after she left the chamber. She sat in the cockpit and gripped the controls and didn't allow herself to stop moving, because the second she stopped moving, she would sit with what had just happened, and she wasn't ready for that yet. She activated the comm system. Open broadcast, Imperial frequencies, civilian frequencies, everything, and she spoke. She spoke for 40 minutes, in both Keth and the human standard, that she'd taught herself from classified linguistics archives. She said her name. She said who she was. She said what had been done 400 years ago and what had just been undone. She said what the relay network was and who had built it and why, right now, every Imperial ship in the galaxy had just discovered it couldn't go anywhere without human permission. She said her grandmother had been human. She said the Empire had been built on stolen history. She said she was sorry. Not for herself, for what her family had done. And she said that the man who had given back 400 years of stolen memory had done it alone, on a frozen mountain with no fleet and no title and no reason to believe it would work. And he'd done it anyway. His name was Marcus Cole. He had been a mechanic on a mining rock the Empire hadn't bothered to name properly. Remember him. The response came from everywhere at once. From humans, shock and dawning wonder and a grief so complicated it had no single name. They were beginning to feel the edges of what had been taken, and the feeling was simultaneously magnificent and devastating, like remembering a language you'd spoken in childhood and lost for decades. From Keth civilians, uncertainty. From Keth military, confusion and a rage that had nowhere useful to go while their ships sat motionless in corridors they couldn't traverse. From the Emperor, silence. The silence lasted 6 hours. When Keth Solarin finally broadcast, his voice was controlled in the way of a man who had spent his entire life controlling everything and had just watched control fail on a scale he'd never planned for. He did not admit wrongdoing. He did not apologize. He declared a state of emergency and ordered the immediate seizure of relay infrastructure. The relay nodes, running on fresh human authentication, declined the order. The Imperial fleets, unable to move, were informed through the network's new human administrative interface that they were welcome to sit where they were for as long as they'd like. It would take weeks to negotiate, months to begin to untangle 4 centuries of deliberate history, years before anything resembling justice could even be defined, let alone pursued. But the first domino had fallen. And it had fallen because a mechanic on a forgotten rock had done the math, understood the cost, and decided that 12 billion people who didn't know yet who they were deserved to find out. 3 months later, Alendra stood in the chamber under the eastern ridge. The node was gone. The stone was scorched in a perfect circle, 200 meters across. Above it, the sky was clear, the first clear sky she'd seen over Dun Station in the weeks she'd been coming here. The fog had lifted. She wasn't sure if that was science or metaphor. She'd stopped trying to separate them. There were people here now. Human archaeologists and Keth historians working awkwardly, side by side, cataloging what had been destroyed and what remained. The relay node was gone, but the chamber infrastructure survived. The walls, the patterns, the geometry that was undeniably, unmistakably human in its proportions and its scale. A small marker had been placed at the center of the scorched circle by the colonists of Dun Station. She walked to it. Stone, not imperial stone, just local granite, rough cut, inscribed in the human standard by someone who'd clearly done it by hand. It said, Marcus Sowell, Dunnan Station, Architect. She stood there for a while. The wind came through the trees on the ridge. Somewhere above her, 3 human-staffed relay nodes were processing work corridor access requests from 30 different Keth vessels, each request reviewed individually, each corridor opened on human terms. The negotiations were messy and slow and nothing like the triumphant resolution that stories were supposed to have. There were human leaders who didn't trust her, who she understood completely not to trust her, who she was having to earn rather than command. There were Keth factions who still believed the historical revision and would believe it until someone sat them down with primary documents and made them read. There were mornings when she thought about her father and the complexity of what she felt was so large it had no shape. There was a great deal still to do. She looked at the marker one more time. Then she turned and walked back out into the light and got to work. Somewhere in the relay network, in the encoded pathways of the infrastructure that humans had built and that humans now controlled, running between the stars and corridors of compressed space-time that a civilization had designed before it was silenced, something lingered, not a ghost, not in any mystical sense, just a signal. A very old species way of saying, we were here. We built this. We made it for you. Come home. For 400 years, no one had heard it. Now, 12 billion voices were learning to answer. They called them the architects because they built the galaxy's roads. They called them slaves because they forgot. They called them weak because they were patient. And they learned too late, or perhaps just in time, that the most dangerous thing in the universe is not the species that builds weapons. It is the species that builds everything else and waits and remembers.